Welcome once again to Fantasy Fiction Focus. We're here today with Calgary author Tim Reynolds. How are you, sir?
I'm good, sir. Yourself? Good afternoon.
Yes, not too bad, thank you. Now, we're here today to talk about all about you, of course. Naturally, it's all about you and your wonderful book. The Broken Shield, I think, is the one that we're going to talk about today. You've done lots of writing, of course, but let's talk about this. The Broken Shield. Now, what's this about? This came out in 2014, I think you said. As an ebook, and now it's a print version. So what's the Broken Shield all about?
The idea behind the Broken Shield is that the battle between good and evil is ongoing, and it runs beneath the surface of what we think of as civilization. And it's been going on, well, my story covers 2,000 years worth of history. The hero, Liam, was the waiter at the Last Supper who took the Holy Grail from the hand of Christ, and he was the first one to protect it. And they talk about the Sermon on the Mount, but Liam's not immortal in the usual sense. He's a shield of light, and they're the good guys. The bad guys, you can call them what you want. They have different names throughout the story, but they're pretty much Lucifer's little minions. Liam is one of about 1,000 shields of light, and their job is simply to protect something like the Holy Grail, Buddha's pebble, Da Vinci's quill. Little items like that need to be kept in circulation in the world for the love that's imbued in them to give us hope and to keep us going, not to hide them away in a warehouse or anything like that. And the bad guys, their job is to try to get them out of circulation so that the grayness descends on us and evil has a better chance. And it starts off modern day Calgary, actually. And Liam is suffering from what may be MS. Recent symptoms have started to show up, and he's starting to break down. He's on his 200th lifetime because he lives and dies like a real man, but he's reborn somewhere else on the planet, reincarnated, lives 18 years without knowing who he is. 18th birthday, wakes up, knows exactly who he is, has all his memories, and knows that he's about to get one of those items of light and has to protect it until he dies. And his goal is to stay beneath the radar because they're after them. So the shields, you don't know they're there. You could walk past one of them on the street, and if you smile for no reason, it could be because he's carrying the Holy Grail or Buddha's pebble, as the case may be. So this story starts off, Liam is running. He's protecting an item. He's also protecting a pixie princess. So it's urban fantasy as opposed to just straight horror or science fiction.
Well, it sounds like there's an awful lot of thought went into this. It's a massive story by the looks of things. So, did it take? When did you first get the idea for this epic?
It started actually about my 50th birthday. I had an idea I wanted a hero that was broken. He is the broken shield. He's a shield, and he's broken. He's giving up hope, and I wanted a hero that wasn't all muscle and sword swinging, but was more able to use his mind. A lot of the idea came to me while I was at work. He originally started off up at Crowfoot train station bottle picking, and that's how he was staying beneath the radar. And it opened up with him having to relieve himself in the bushes. And so you got to see a hero that was truly down and out. I was told he wasn't very sympathetic, so I changed the opening of the story. But the concepts came from different directions. The love interest, the idea came from when I looked out of a vehicle and saw a young lady walking past me at a red light, and she looked up and smiled and kept on walking. But the smile wasn't, "Hi, how are you?" It's, "There you are. I haven't seen you in a while," but we had never seen each other before. And the idea that two souls could know each other, even though the faces were different, that gave me the idea of going with reincarnation as opposed to Highlander-style immortality.
Well, I guess you never really know where these influences are going to come from. I mean, when people are asked about this, well, where did the idea come from? It's something bizarre or something unexpected. But so this was somebody you'd seen, obviously a stranger. But is there any other people you know in this story that you based characters on, or even yourself? This guy Liam in the story. I mean, is he based on you, or a younger you, or somebody you know?
He's very much me. The story opens up on his 50th birthday. I don't have MS. My dad did, but Liam and I are very similar in our thoughts, our beliefs. I like to think that I would act as bravely as he if the situation came up, but I've never killed anybody. I haven't had 200 lifetimes. The dog in the story, the pixie, is disguised the pixie princess. That was my dog Phoenix. So there was that issue or that character that's based on something or someone real. But a number of the shields are actually based on people I've known and loved over the years. And I don't mean ex-girlfriends per se, but friends, roommates that have died young. And so I wanted to put them into the story and give them noble deaths, which they may or may not have had in real life. One of them was a roommate, and I was told in one of my first readers, you can't kill that particular character. Please let her live this time. So in the story, she gets to live. I won't spoil it and say which she I'm talking about. But my father and grandfather in there, and the shield scenes tend to be very short. You see this shield who's protecting an item and he's over playing golf in Holland, and another one who might be on a rooftop in Prague. And you see their moment, you know what they're protecting, and then you see the moment of their death because the bad guys have learned how to track them down using a smartphone app. So you start seeing them drop like dominoes. And most of those characters are based on someone I know. One was a motorcycle accident, killed him at the age of 21. I'd known Richard since I was in kindergarten. A good man with a lot of troubles in his life. And so I thought, well, let's make him a shield, and he goes down in a blaze of gunfire and protecting right and good. And so a lot of the characters are based on people I know that have gone far too soon.
So there's also, of course, an element, I presume, there's obviously history in here. There's religious history in here and things like that in the book too. So is this something you've always been interested in? Are you a history buff or knowledgeable about different historical periods and everything?
I have a degree in history. So it's always been something I've found interesting. Always enjoyed the research aspects of it. Also, my family has danced around in history. The Mayflower, Salem, Massachusetts, Russian Revolution, Huguenot Rebellion, Confederation of Canada. So researching family history has also made me want to involve that on a human level. We hear about these big events, but the fact that there was, my grandfather was there shortly after the Russians executed the royal family, which is where I got the idea for another novel that will be coming out this year. And so I try to feed a lot of that into here and to make history at the human level, or to twist history and on a personal level.
And I think that's what you mentioned. It's mentioned on your website and everything. I think you call yourself a twistorian, which I'm assuming is based on history, but you're writing either alternate history and different timelines, or just different takes on different historical events, right?
Exactly, yes. Some of them are alternate history, but more often I tend to take something you know and give it a layer that you don't. Maybe it was an earthquake and it's explained using plate tectonics by science, but in my story it might be a battle between two titans kind of thing that you might not see, that the people would live through it, the disaster exists. It's something you can go online and look up, but I'm giving you the conspiracy theory on a magical, twisted side.
Yes, I think sometimes people are writing historical fiction quite often. They don't do this. Historical fiction, as far as I can see, a lot of it is popular. We've got certain periods of popular Victorian London and the Scottish Highlands and the Middle Ages, of course, naturally, and ancient Greece and all these things. But sometimes people are ignoring the fact that these events were happening in the background. We don't have to have people meeting Napoleon and famous people, but these things are happening in the background, right? Exactly.
Yes, there were carpenters and seamstresses and dock workers throughout most of those events you just mentioned, and quite often their stories can be as fascinating as the historical events we all study in school.
Yeah, because I mean, people don't have to be involved in all these famous battles and everything. But I mean, if you were writing a story set in between 1914 and 1918 in London, and you didn't mention that there was a war going on, your story wouldn't be very credible, I don't suppose.
No, definitely not. It's it's the major events that people will have a comment. They'll bring something to the story already. They understand World War I, even if you take it into a steampunk approach. and bring in dragons, for example, or any number of different things that would alter the story. At least somebody's coming in with the knowledge of, okay, there was World War I, we didn't have nuclear weapons, we have. It's nice to be able to use the major events because of the knowledge base that's already there. You don't have to invent as much.
Now, are you thinking of doing more adventures with these people? And obviously, the Broken Shield thing seems to me to be bigger than a single book. I would imagine there's a series or at least a sequel in this.
It's designed to be a series. The second book, I had an idea for it, and it branched off to become something completely different, but with different characters. But I have planted seeds in the new project that will lead back to the Broken Shield should I write the sequel. To be honest, it'll mostly be based on popularity. Sales haven't been, it's self-published, sales haven't been as high as I would have liked, but I wrote it, I'm glad. It's a project I'm quite proud of. If it gained in popularity and people started saying, wow, what happens next? Then of course, I'd be glad to keep that story going. But 2,000 years worth of history and all of these characters, I could do an anthology with this and have other authors write a short story based on a different shield in a different era and do almost anything they wanted because the rules are so wide open. And that was one of the possibilities, that if the book had taken off, I would have talked to a bigger publisher, bigger than myself, and had them and pitched it to them.
Well, obviously, yeah. The thing is, having taken off. I mean, it was an ebook in what 2014 and a print book last year.
Yes, so I'm still, there's some time.
Yeah, it's still early. Now, you mentioned that you're also going into you're sticking with a historical theme. There's another book coming out this year that's all about. Well, you tell us what it's about. It's
called Waking Anastasia, and it's coming out with Tyche Books out of Calgary here. And Waking Anastasia started as a screenplay based on a dream. I had this vivid dream one night of a man who awakens a ghost and falls in love with it. And I woke up the next morning, made some quick notes, and asked myself who it was. And for some reason, Anastasia Romanov's name came up, or Anastasia Romanova, to pronounce it properly. I keep getting told by my friends who speak Russian that I've got it wrong. And so I thought it'd be interesting to awaken that ghost, but I didn't know how to get her and the character together in a modern era. And then I found out that my own grandfather was over there and was at the site that the Russian royals were murdered at. He was there shortly after with the Canadian Expeditionary Force. He took photographs, which the RCMP now possess, that was evidence that was denied throughout the entire Cold War, that the Russians had been murdered. And I thought, well, what if he picked something up and brought it back and her ghost was in it? So I used Blake's poetry, Songs of Innocence and Experience, and that's where her soul was trapped. The great-grandson inherits it. He awakens the ghost after moving to the West Coast to live in Victoria, who was Anastasia's great-grandmother. And then I just take it from there based on my research of Anastasia and the character that we don't know. She was a rebellious 17-year-old who smoked, who liked to drink, and who loved to take selfies. I posted a picture on Facebook of Anastasia taking a picture of herself in a mirror, and I think it was about 1912 or 1913 she took that photo. And I thought, that is a fascinating young woman. She died at 17, so I have her age herself through her ability. She says, well, I'm 100 years old, so I can be any age I want. So she becomes more like her older sisters. And the more she falls in love with the hero, the more solid she becomes. So we're not talking Ghost, where nobody can see her, or Ghostbusters, where you can pass a hand through it. She actually becomes more and more solid, and she lives the life that she never had. And that's based on actual facts and places in Victoria and true history, and as much of research as I could do on Anna herself.
So this is certainly so obviously are you going to stick with this sort of historical, even paranormal now? Are those the sort of projects you'll be consumed with over the next few years, do you think?
Not paranormal. The novel I'm just finishing the first draft on is high fantasy, I guess they call it. It's set in fairy. It follows a group of young female fairies And it's a little bit of steampunk, but a lot of fairy. It's a quest to save families. I have another project that is historical, but there's no speculative element to it. It's set during the Prohibition, and it's a murder. It's a mystery based on 3 deaths that occurred within 2 days of each other in a small town in Ontario. And one of the deaths was my great-grandmother. And one of the other, there was a 32-year-old man who took his own life, and an infant that was murdered the day it was born. And the document I found actually named the murderer. So I thought that'd be a fascinating story to work a fiction around. And but I'm researching Prohibition. I'm learning so much about it because I want it to be historically accurate. I want this to be the kind of project that somebody's not going to look at it and go, oh yeah, there's Al Capone. No, I want them to look at it and go, this is what it felt like to live in a small town in Prohibition.
So you've got lots of things on the go at once, by the sound. Do you like to have lots of different projects happening at the same time, or do you like to finish one before you start another, or largely finish one before you start another, or can you work on multiple things at once in various stages of completion?
The last one. I work on multiple projects at the same time, depending on whether I've got what equipment I've got with me. If I'm doing first draft work and all I've got is pen and paper, which is how I write my first drafts, then I'll work on that. If I've got one of my electronics with me, the iPad or the computer, I might work on editing a piece that's in the next stage, or even designing the covers. Whether I publish it or not, I like to design a cover so I've got something visually in my head that I can play with. It gives me a goal to make me think, yes, this can be real, even if the cover is such junk that I'd never show it to friends. I've got one science fiction novel that has been 30 years now, I think I've been working on it. But technology changes so much that I keep having to adapt. And also it was 150,000 words and I've got to bring it down to 100,000. So each of those, probably, I'd say 6 projects on the go at various stages right now.
Now, before the Broken Shield, you've done short stories and you've got stuff in anthology and things as well, right? So I mean, obviously you didn't become new to this in 2014.
No, I had published starting in 2009. Well, actually, my first short story was published back in the 80s and won a national writing competition and was on the front page of all the art sections in the country and got me radio attention and television. And then it died within 5 days. I even had a publisher for the project. It was going to be a series of children's books. And they held off on the signing of the contract because the company was undergoing some changes. They were bought out. It was one of Canada's most prestigious publishers. They were bought out by a company out of Montreal whose interests were banking. They looked at the bottom line of the publisher and said, oh, they're not making enough money. Then the company was closed. They closed their doors, no contract signed. And so I just took time off after that and started writing science fiction. Eventually, through Calgary conventions, I met Gwen Gades of Dragon Moon Publishing and got involved with short story writing there and doing an anthology for her. So I've had 11 short stories published over the few years, and finally they led to the Broken Shield.
So you've been pretty active all this time. Now, you mentioned the writing community as well. Now, you are quite involved in the writing community locally, I think, aren't you, in Calgary?
I'm not as involved as I was. I'm a member of IFWA, the Imaginative Fiction Writers Association. I attend and participate in and even lead classes at When Words Collide, which is our Readers and Writers Festival every summer in August. My work schedule now takes me until 10:30 or 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, so I can't make monthly meetings. I don't go to any readings during the week. I try to do readings and signings on weekends. So because of the work schedule, I've had to shift in that direction, away from the fun events where you wine and cheese and science fiction writers and fantasy writers.
So, but you're still as active as you can be anyway. I think is it important, do you think, to be involved with the local writing community?
I think it's vital. I don't think you can succeed in the business on any level without being involved, because you're not just getting, you can get critique, feedback. You are also getting support emotionally. Writing is such a solitary thing that to be part of a community really makes you think you're not alone. That you can get through this. Other people have gone through it, are going through it. I know people who've been working on the same novel for 20 years. And yes, I've got the one I've been working on for 30, but it's not my only project. But we all support each other, and whether you're part of a group like IFWA or the Romance Writers of Alberta or the Mystery Writers, I think it's important to have a group that you can go to with similar interests that aren't just there to criticize as opposed to critique your work, but to give you the moral support. Sometimes it's literally hugs, and sometimes it's just a quiet basement to write in with a bunch of friends.
So, as well as that, of course, obviously that's important. Just as someone who's been writing for quite some time, short stories and everything else, and has multiple projects on the go, do you have one piece of advice for people who are just sort of starting out and think, "Oh, I'll never be successful," or my writing's not worthwhile," or whatever? Any advice you would give to someone?
Right. The best piece of advice I heard was actually in an online writing course that I'm taking from the great courses on writing fiction. And he quoted Nick Lowe, the musician and music producer, who is known within the production of music as the basher. And Nick's motto is bash it out the first time and tart it up the second time. And that's exactly what I say to anybody is your first draft is going to be expletive deleted. I'll use the word crap. That's what it's going to be. You can't get around that. Some of the best writers in the world write their first draft and nobody sees it until they've taken a shot at the second draft. And if you don't write that first draft, you'll never write anything. So get it out there. Don't worry about what it looks like. Don't edit it sentence by sentence. Get the draft done, then go back and start to edit. And if you don't know how to edit, you get somebody to help you with that. That's what writing groups are good for, is learning how to do that, whether it's advice on story structure. But you're right. Be creative. Do some research, but don't get lost in the research.
Yeah, so writers write. I think that's the best thing. I think that's a lot of people. I meet a lot of people like you. I do book signings locally, and I meet a lot of people who sometimes they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking of writing a book," but they never do. They never actually sit down and do any work on it. So, but look, well, thanks for being with us today. It's been great. Obviously, the Broken Shield is out there already, but we're looking forward to seeing this Anastasia one. I'm sure, so I'll hear more about that as months progress, I'm sure. So thanks for being here today, and we wish you all the best with everything in the coming months and years.
Thank you very much, Simon. All the best to you. Thank you for your time and for the interest in the Broken Shield and the other projects. I'll let you know how it goes.